Welcome back to RAB Weekly, the baseball newspaper for the hopeless romantic. I'm Lorenzo from Big League Takes. If you're joining us for the first time, here's the idea. Every week, we build a baseball newspaper. Not just the scores, the standings, the stories, the stars, the slumps, the debates, and the weirdness around baseball. And the moments that remind us why we fell in love with the game in the first place. Think of it like sitting down on a Sunday morning, grabbing a cup of coffee, unfolding the sports section, catching up on everything that matters across MLB. So grab your coffee, unfold the paper, and let's start where every paper starts, and that's the front page. Every newspaper needs a headline. This week, we grabbed four. A ballpark becoming baseball's biggest debate, a vote of confidence that didn't calm anyone down, two young stars arriving on the big stage, and a pair of pitching performances that nearly made history. So let's start in Vegas, because every week we're seeing these offensive numbers around baseball just explode like it's a video game. And this past week in Las Vegas, it just created a whole new offensive environment. Unlike anything else in baseball, the Athletics, who we knew their offense was really good, I don't think you expect what happened in Vegas. Every hitter went off. And on the flip side, you had pitchers who were leaving town looking like they just survived a natural disaster. We're going to be talking about Jeffrey Springs later in the show. Spoiler alert, it wasn't pretty. At some point, Major League Baseball is going to have to ask whether they can slow down scoring in Vegas or if they even want to, because this is really exciting. So now let's head over to Boston, where Red Sox CEO publicly backed their chief baseball officer, Craig Breslow, which unsurprisingly didn't exactly calm down the fan base. Because when ownership says a front office executive is safe, fans hear something completely different. They hear frustration. They hear expectations not being met. They hear another season where Boston isn't where it should be, where they believed it should be. And look, whether you think Breslow deserves the criticism or not, one thing is undeniable. The patience is running out. This is a fan base that expects championships, not explanations. Every season that ends without October baseball only turns up the volume. And while Boston is arguing about the present, baseball future has arrived. Bryce Eldridge walk-off grand slam this past week. Braden Montgomery walk-off homer in his major league debut. Baseball has a funny way of creating these moments. Like you could spend years talking about these prospects, reading scouting reports, watching minor league hitting, projecting what they might become. Then suddenly they're standing at home plate getting mobbed by teammates. For Eldridge, it was the type of moment Giants fans will remember forever. A walk-off grand slam doesn't happen every day. For Braden Montgomery, it happened in his first taste of the big leagues. You only get one debut. He made it count. Seeing the joy from his mother's tweets was pretty cool too. The moment's bigger than what we just see on that baseball field. And it's a reminder that baseball's future isn't coming. Baseball's future is already here. And finally, on the front page, we have two young. Finally, on the front page, we have Jacob Mazeroski and Yamamoto chasing perfection. 9 innings for Mazeroski, 1 hit, 0 runs, 15 strikeouts, a complete game shutout, 27 hitters faced against the Phillies. And if he struck out 15 guys, you got 27 outs. He struck out more guys than he had balls put in play. It was a great start. It's one of the starts that changes the way people talk about you. A year ago, Jacob Mizorowski was an exciting young flamethrower. Now, he's a Cy Young favorite. He has one of the most electric arms in baseball. We're talking about a guy every fan is stopping what they're doing to watch. And then you had Yamamoto, who was a Mookie Betts error away from chasing his own perfection. For most of the afternoon, we weren't watching a baseball game. We were watching history. The perfect game stayed alive, out after out, inning after inning, and then one mistake, one error, one moment. And perfection disappeared. The perfect game was lost. The dominant outing was over. And Yamamoto continues to remind everybody, though, he's firmly in that race for the Cy Young. Those are this week's headlines, but let's turn the page. And because those stories dominated the front page, a few players absolutely took over the box scores. So here at the box scores, every week there are players who force their way in the newspaper. Sometimes as a superstar doing superstar things, sometimes as a breakout player announcing himself, and sometimes a player who's having just a ridiculous week. This week, we're starting with The Miz again, because honestly, we have to. And we just talked about the 9 innings, the 15 strikeouts, the 27 batters faced. the Phillies, it's not like they have a chump lineup. They're coming at you with Schwarber, Harper, Brennan Marsh. Like after that, they really don't have much. But those three guys, that when you're planning, you're coming up with your game plan, those guys just circle and understand what's going on with the game. The Phillies just looked overmatched all game. And it was just so efficient. It was a Maddox, a 15 strikeout Maddox, under 100 pitches. That's incredible. He set a new fastball velo at 104. He hit 103 in the ninth inning. The Miz is like no other flamethrower, and it's scary how great he is. So not just on the pitching side for Milwaukee, but you also had a hitter in Jackson Chourio this week. He had 448 batting average, a 452 on base percentage, 968 slugging percentage. The kid hit 5 home runs, 10 RBIs, 8 runs scored, 284 weighted runs created plus, and my favorite stat, a 517 isolated power. For anyone unfamiliar with the isolated power stat, that's an absurd number. A 500 means that every swing you had a chance to change the ball game, right? Leave the yard. He was a 517. And I think Jackson's just scratching the surface. Like the Brewers paid him to become the superstar, right? They're now watching that superstar become alive. And speaking of offensive explosions, we talked about it earlier. Let's head back to Vegas. We had a couple guys that just went absolutely off in Vegas this week. Tyler Soderstrom, 381, 481 dot 048, 4 home runs, 9 RBIs, a 296 weighted runs created plus. Nick Kurtz, a 375, 500, 917, 4 home runs, 7 RBIs, a 263 weighted runs created plus. And then Brett Sullivan, 500 batting average, small sample, 1.40 slugging percentage, 3 home runs, a 363 weighted runs created. 3 hitters just absolutely taking advantage of Las Vegas. It was incredible. And finally, we're hitting back to Yamamoto because Mizorowski gave us the most dominating pitching performance of the week. Yamamoto definitely was the most heartbreaking. We hit it before. For most of the afternoon, we weren't watching a baseball game. We felt like we were watching history. We felt like it was going to happen. And then just that one moment happened, and the game's over. He gives it the home run. Yamamoto was brilliant. The command was brilliant. The stuff was great. And every week, he's fighting to be in that Cy Young race. It's not just the Miz. It's not just Christopher Sanchez. Yamamoto is part of that conversation. He's just stacking up elite performances. He feels like he's a forgotten candidate, but he's definitely not. So those are this week's heroes. Unfortunately, not everybody had a good week worth celebrating. So let's head over to the police blotter and let's see who has an APB out. So some players spent the week filling up the box scores. Others spent the week avoiding them. Welcome to the police blotter. Let's start back in Las Vegas because if the Athletic hitters had a great week, somebody had to be on the receiving end. Sorry, Jeffrey Springs. 2 starts, 9 innings, 11 earned runs, 13 total runs given up, 15 hits, 5 home runs allowed. Now, before we completely bury Jeffrey Springs here, context matters. We spent the entire show talking about how absurd the offensive environment in Las Vegas has become. Springs got the full experience. He had 2 starts in Vegas. And the opposing hitters were just launching baseballs all over the yard. And honestly, I don't think it's going to be the last pitcher that we have this conversation about. If offenses keep looking like this in Vegas, there are going to be a lot more victims. Next up, Wilber Dotel. And the numbers just didn't feel real for Dotel this week. 1 2/3 innings in relief, 10 earned runs, 9 hits, 4 walks, 2 strikeouts, some rough outings, some nightmare outings. And then there was whatever this was with the 10 earned runs and 5 outs recorded. Every hitter didn't reach base. Every mistake got punished. And before you could even process what happened, another run across the plate. And sometimes baseball humbles you. This was baseball with a sledgehammer. It was a bad week for Dotel. Let's move to Connolly Early next. He had 2 starts, 9 1/3 innings, 8 earned runs, 11 hits, 3 home runs, 6 walks, 9 strikeouts. And honestly, this is the most interesting name on the page because there are things to like. 9 strikeouts tells you the stuff's still there. The problem is everything else. Too many walks, too many mistakes in the zone, too many hitter-friendly counts. This doesn't feel like a talent issue. It feels more like a refinement issue. This past week with Early, the ingredients are still there. The recipe's just still getting cooked up. So let's move on to the bad hitters for the week. Willie Adames, 0.50 batting average, a 0.95 on base, a 0.50 slugging percentage, a negative 62 weighted runs created plus, a 0.67 BABIP. Now, look, the BABIP tells you there was some bad luck involved. Nobody's actually this bad, we hope, for Adames' sake. But when you're in the middle of this, it just sure feels that way. Everything that he's hitting is finding a glove. Everything is turning into an out. And it's just one of the coldest starts of the season. Next up, we have another guy, also not doing too hot, and Trey Turner. He hit 115 this past week, 148 on base percentage, 154 slug, a negative 23 weighted runs created plus, a 37% strikeout rate, 0.38 isolated power. The batting average jumps out immediately right at the 115, but the stat that caught my eye was the ISO. There's no damage, no extra base impact, no fear factor. For a guy that has Trey Turner's skill set, it's surprising what's going on with him this year. Because even when he's not getting his hits, he's supposed to be creating that pressure. You expect him to create that chaos. This year, none of it showed up. And that's why both Adames and Turner land in this week's police blotter. Now let's leave the crime scene behind and head over to the opinion page. It's time to talk about the classifieds. Every newspaper has a classified section. People are buying, people are selling, people looking for help. And this week, we're starting on the south side of Chicago. I'm buying the White Sox. And yes, I know this sounds weird. For years, we've criticized teams for refusing to commit to a rebuild. The White Sox committed, right? They tore it all down. They traded their veterans away. They acquired young talent. And we're finally seeing those results. The lineup wins in different ways. Some nights it's power. Some nights it's speed. Some nights they're taking advantage of the platoons. More importantly, a huge portion of this roster was acquired through those trades that they made. That's the entire point of rebuilding, right? You close one window, you gather enough talent to open up another. I don't think the White Sox are finished. I really like this team. They're ahead of where most people thought they'd be, and I think that's worth acknowledging. So next up, we have the sell section, and I'm selling the Phillies. And now before Philly fans get upset, let me explain. This isn't about the regular season. The Phillies are surging under Mattingly. This is about October. When I look at this lineup, I see Harper, I see Schwarber, I see Marsh. Then I ask questions. Because postseason baseball is different. Rotations shrink, bullpens get deeper, mistakes disappear. And eventually, every contender reaches a point where the stars need help. Right now, I'm not convinced the Phillies have enough of it. A good team? Absolutely. A playoff threat? I'm not there yet. And finally, help wanted. Mentioned it already, but the National League Cy Young voters. Because if you listen to most baseball coverage right now, you think it's a two-horse race in Jacob Misiorowski and Christopher Sanchez. And both deserve the attention. They're having standout years. But also having standout years, Yamamoto, Ohtani, Chase Burns. This race is loaded. The headlines are focusing on two names. The actual race is much deeper than that. So this week's Help Wanted ad goes out to everybody filling out a ballot. Please expand the search. Now let's turn the page one more time because every newspaper has a gossip section. This is ours at page 6. The weird page, the fun page, the page where baseball minds just doesn't take itself too seriously. Aroldis Chapman wants an apology from the Yankees. What? Nothing says closure quite like asking for an apology through the media. What are you doing, Chapman? Yankees Boone's already came out saying he doesn't deserve an apology. He doesn't know why he wants an apology. Really weird from Chapman to say that. On the topic of the Yankees, let's move to Jose Caballero, or as opposing fan bases know him, that pest. Caballero has become one of the great pests in baseball, and now an umpire is publicly saying he's manipulating the pitch clock and disrupting the natural flow of the game, which honestly sounds like a compliment to Jose Caballero. That's how he would frame it and hang it on his wall. Every era of baseball had a player like this, the guy you hate unless he's on your team, the guy who gets under everyone's skin, the guy who somehow always seems involved. Congrats, Jose. You're this generation's guy. And finally, Cooper Pratt. The Brewers gave an extension in April. Now he's headed to the big leagues in June. That's an organization looking at a player and saying, hey, we know exactly who we think you are. Let's just develop you and get you there. Milwaukee continues to develop talent as well as anybody in baseball, and Cooper Pratt's going to be the latest example of that. So let's leave behind the drama and move on to our next story at RAB Weekly. It's time for the love letter. Every week we try to find one story that reminds us that baseball is more than numbers, more than standings, more than awards, more than contracts. This week's love letter goes to Trey Mancini because sometimes the best baseball stories aren't about what a player accomplishes, they're about what a player refuses to give up on. Trey Mancini stepped onto a major league field this week for the first time since 2023. And if you followed his journey, you know that sentence means more than a transactional wire update. This is a cancer survivor. This is a former comeback player of the year, a player who became one of the most respected figures in baseball, and a player who easily could have walked away. Think about how many reasons he had. He had the health battle, his time away, the grind back, the uncertainty. Young players arriving early every year. Baseball is ruthless. It always asks the same questions. What can you do for me today? And eventually, every player reaches a point where the game stops giving them opportunities. For a lot of people, they assumed Trey Mancini had reached that point. Turns out, Trey Mancini disagreed. He kept working, he kept believing, he kept chasing one more opportunity. And this week, he got it. The thing I love most about baseball is that it doesn't always give happy endings. Sometimes it gives another chance, and another chance is exactly what Trey Mancini earned. This isn't about home runs or RBIs or a stat line. This was about perseverance. This is about showing up every day even when nobody's paying attention. This is about refusing to let somebody else decide when your story ends. Trey Mancini's baseball story isn't over, and that's why he's this week's love letter. So let's look ahead because every newspaper has a forecast section, and here at RAB Weekly, we forecast October. So in October, right now in the American League, you have the Yankees with the 1 seed, the White Sox in the 2 seed, Mariners at 3, winning the West right now, the Rays, Guardians, Athletics, all holding a wild card spot. So playoff season, if it ended today, we have the Athletics at the Mariners. In that scenario, I think I'm going Mariners. Their pitching is really strong. I believe they could shut down the Athletics, especially at the home field advantage. They would go ahead and face the White Sox, who in that series, White Sox versus Mariners, if they had to play today, I like the White Sox. They're coming off 2 great series they just had. And on the flip side, you have the Guardians and Rays. I like the Rays a lot in that series. I think Rays are going to Rays, especially in the playoffs. So then you got the Rays at the Yankees. I'm going the Yankees. I'm a homer. Always going to go for the Yankees when they're going to be deep in the playoffs. When they have a good team now, a lot of guys are hurt. I'm going to sway and go the other way, but that rotation that the Yankees are going to throw at you in a 7-game series is scary, and they're going to be moving Ryan Weathers to the bullpen. They're going to have Carlos Agrange back there. It's a scary bullpen they're going to have. So then I have the Yankees, White Sox. I'm going Yankees. I don't think the White Sox have the pitching to go for a 7-game series against the Yankees. Now, can they make a deadline move and get really exciting? Absolutely. So Yankees are my AL team right now in the National League. Braves got the 1 seed, Dodgers 2, Brewers have the Central, and the Cardinals, Phillies, Padres all have wild card spots. Padres at Brewers. I'm going Brewers in this series. Brewers just winning a lot of different ways. The first 2 in the rotation in the Miz and Kyle Harrison are pitching extraordinarily well. The Padres, you have a lot of questions in that lineup. So Brewers played Dodgers. We saw this last year. Dodgers handled their business. I think Dodgers do it again. Yamamoto, Ohtani in a playoff series. You're seeing them. Good luck. So I got Dodgers in that. Cardinals at Phillies. I'm going Phillies in a short series. They're top of the rotation is really strong. I think they overcome their hitting lack of hitting. With that, then you got Phillies at Braves. We've seen this few too many times. Braves take the Phillies. Braves are a really strong team. Braves at Dodgers at Braves now. I'm sorry, Braves. Dodgers get my pick, and it's just in a short 7-game, in a shorter series. You're going to see Ohtani. You're going to see Yamamoto twice. Who doesn't like that? Plus, everybody else is going to be thrown at you. And Justin Werblowski and Emmett Sheehan and a lot of other guys they have in that Dodgers rotation. Like them a lot. So my World Series are Dodgers, Yankees. I'm going Yankees because I'm a homer. That is your October forecast. And after the October forecast, it's time to talk about before we fold up this week's paper, let's take a look at what's worth watching over this week. There's a few weekday series that we need to be paying attention to. You got Pirates at Athletics. This series might feature more offense than a slow pitch softball tournament. Nick Kirk is swinging a really hot bat. The Athletics just are putting up absurd offensive numbers. But the Pirates should not be counted out at the plate. They're a really good team, really exciting to watch. Then you have Rays at Dodgers. This might be a World Series preview and a great measuring stick for the Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays, they've been winning. They're developing talent. They just keep proving people wrong. Now they get one of baseball's biggest tests. There is a battle in the National League this weekend. You got Brewers at Braves. This one feels really important. The Braves continue to look like one of the best teams in baseball. The Brewers continue producing stars. The Miz is grabbing headlines. Jackson Chourio is becoming a superstar. And if Milwaukee wants to make a statement, this is a series to do it. Can Matt Olson, Drake Baldwin hold them off? And we got a don't call it a comeback section. White Sox at Tigers, Guardians at Astros, Blue Jays at Cubs, Padres at Rangers. These are all series where teams start showing us who they really are, right? Don't call it a comeback. You coming back up in this division, or we're burying you here. The White Sox, the rebuild is beginning to be awesome, but Detroit is probably off aspirations. Can the Detroit Tigers slow down this White Sox train? Cleveland will not be counted out. Houston refuses to die. Toronto and Chicago are both trying to prove they're legitimate October teams. And the Padres and Rangers are still searching for consistency. The standings matter, but series like these tell us more than the standings ever will. And with that, we've reached the end of this week's edition. If you made it this far, thank you. The show is still brand new. We're still building it. We're still experimenting, still trying to create the baseball newspaper we wish existed. So let us know what you think, what worked, what didn't, what should be longer, what should be shorter. What stories should we spend more time on? We're reading every comment, looking at every message. For RAB Weekly, I'm Lorenzo from Big League Takes. Thank you for spending part of the week with us.